Hey everyone, welcome to BrickVault. Today I get to show you guys an amazing little creation, or a set of creations really. This is the ATRT. That stands for All-Terrain Recon Transport, but I'd say this vehicle is better known as the Republic Scout Walker. For the life of me, I don't know why or how this thing got replaced by the ATST or even the speeder bike. It's such an effective recon as well as fighting vehicle that my only guess is maybe it's super expensive to produce and they just replaced him with things that were more efficient or cheaper to make. But needless to say, this is probably one of my favorite creations to come from the Clone Wars era. I usually gravitate towards smaller vehicles in general, and the ATRT also has a somewhat animalistic way of walking and moving around. The original ATST also had a somewhat fluid motion, but honestly nothing compares to the way these things jump and sprint and navigate rough terrain almost automatically, like they've got a mind of their own. There's a lot of fun details I'd love to talk about more when it comes to this little guy, but this video is about the Lego model, the minifigure scale Lego build that has come from the designer David Buckles. Just like his recent model of the Republic gunship that also went up in the web store, the instructions, the building instructions for this walker can be found at our web store. That's www.brickvault.toys. Included are the PDF step-by-step building instructions as well as digital parts list files for ordering all the pieces that you're gonna need to make this build happen. You might have noticed that there are two different colors as well. We've got the green for your basic ATRT or Lightning Squadron if you want, and then the walker also comes with blue accents to match the 501st. There are also variations on how the bottom portion of the legs are built depending on if you want to add an extra joint of articulation or go for a little bit more structural stability. This is what the walkers look like compared to many of our other Lego minifigure Star Wars builds that we've got right now, and it comes as no surprise that this is among the very smallest of any of the creations. When looking at the official Lego sets of an ATRT, Republic Scout Walker, there isn't even really a comparison. Those creations look a lot closer to what maybe an ATST would be sized at, and of course that's because logistically they have to be able to match up with Lego's play standards, whereas these ones might be a little bit harder to balance, but they absolutely look the part here. Now, getting into the functions or logistics of each of the models, let's take a look at the 501st build first. This has also the updated legs, or the stronger legs, so this is definitely the more stable version of the build, and getting a minifigure sitting down in the ATRT is quite easy. You snap the hands in first and you can kind of just push him down in between the front and back sections. Looks like he's sitting down just fine, and there's also 1 or 2 points of connection between the upper and lower half of the body, and you might need to adjust how vertical the head is actually resting on the legs. I appreciate David's aesthetic use of the Technic pieces that make up the legs. When it comes to a build this small and you want it to be structurally sound, you have to use Technic pieces, but you also don't want the build to feel repetitive or like it's simply a frame built out of Technic parts purely for logistical structural reasons. It's my personal opinion that he struck a balance really well by using some Technic parts, some connectors, but also adding some gears on the side for just kind of fun aesthetic purposes. And then, believe it or not, here are the only points of articulation, or sorry, there are 2 points of articulation, but the only ones that really have any friction to it are by the ankles. The higher joint that can move around is a little bit loose, and the head kind of rests on top of the legs there. And then here is a sort of second point of articulation at the bottom, and I don't know if that's totally intentional, but the the ankles can splay inward and outward there, giving you just a little bit more freedom on how you want your ATRT to stand. I personally think it actually looks a bit more dynamic this way, with the feet kind of spreading apart. Feels a little bit more well balanced. And then you can also play around with how you want your legs to be spaced on the body, maybe one inching forward ever so slightly with the other feeling like it's inched back. This may go without saying, but you cannot pose this walker or any two-legged walker to my knowledge with one foot completely off the ground. But personally, I'm pretty happy with the range of motion that we get here. The combination of having feet being able to splay outwards and also the legs kind of moving forward and back slightly offset from each other certainly gives it a feeling that the walker is in motion. Now, when it comes to the second build, this is the Lightning Squadron, or the normal version. It's just the green highlighted ATRT. It has a different set of connections that you can have by the ankles. It basically adds one more point of articulation. So let's get the minifigure in the seat, and here we go. It stands just fine in the regular standing position. Sometimes you do have to make sure that that little ball joint piece that's at the bottom by the ankle is pushed in all the way. You can see I accidentally left an extra little stud piece on the inside of one of the legs. Not really supposed to be there. I think I was just testing to see if that would add any stability to this version of the model, which it doesn't. But anyways, you get a pretty good idea as to what this model looks like. Personally, I think this look is actually pretty darn solid. I can see why David used this as the original design before testing it out for slightly more structural stuff. And then me testing it out right here is where sort of the weakness comes in. If you push it down just a little bit too much, it'll go forward and the ankle breaks at that alternate joint area. Splaying the feet outward can be done as well with this version of the build, though it is just a little bit more finicky, and in general you have to be just slightly more careful with this model compared to the other. As I move this guy around so you can see this build from different angles, for transparency's sake I'll just show you this whole thing uncut, and you'll see that he is falling over a bit more. You can see that I'm spending a bit more extra time making sure that this model doesn't want to fall one direction or another, which is the reason why we've added the stronger leg design. And actually I would consider that the primary build. This is more of like the secondary original version if you thought this one looked cooler and you didn't mind being a little bit more delicate with the final build. And now putting these two versions of the build together, you can see that the blue version, the updated leg version of the model, is about a brick higher, I'd say. And also the color highlights are not a mirror image of each other, but in fact the 501st is just more blue than the original green or Lightning Squadron. From the back you can see the mechanical detailing a little bit better. Remember, this is all about reconnaissance. A lot of this vehicle was. According to the lore, the sensors of this walker were so powerful that it would automatically log and keep track of all the different enemy units that it could detect and update the forward command centers of what the ground battle looked like in real time. My personal theory is that these walkers' sensors had to be so powerful in order just to operate properly, like run through a forest quickly without tripping over stones or something, that they had inadvertently turned themselves into hypersensitive detection centers just by happenstance. Remember, the leg differences can be added to either variation of the model. They are not exclusive to the color variants. And then even up close, the mechanical detailing on the underbelly of these models really does look good. Here you can see somewhat of a closer bit of that internal structure, and though there's only one or two primary points of connection here, they're actually sandwiched in really strong. Normally I have a handling section of the video, though I've been handling these models pretty much the entire video, so you can see how well they stand up when I knock them over. The smaller greebling details stay on pretty well, and honestly you don't have to be careful when picking this model up at all. In fact, you can pretty much do whatever you want to this thing, and none of the pieces are going to be falling off too easily. Maybe the primary gun, I don't know, that's the only thing I can think of. These things are pretty darn solid little objects. The main thing you want to do is make sure to balance them well when you stand them up. And also, I'm right at the end here, but I totally forgot to mention that for the 501st, David has also included the recommended sticker sheet to get if you wanted to add some of the 501st detailings. This is a picture of what that would look like, and anyways, it's totally an option if you'd like to include it. So that's it, guys. These are the two different ATRTs built by David Buckles. I think they match up really well with his Republic gunship, and if you wanted to get the building instructions, you can always go to our web store. That's www.brickvault.toys. It really helps support us here at the channel, as well as the awesome designers that we work with like David. Let me know what kind of custom builds you want to see us do in the future. If you enjoy our content, you can always like or subscribe, and we'll see you next time at BrickVault.